Yo, what's going on, everybody? You're watching Giants Now by Chat Sports. I am your host, Marshall Green. Appreciate everybody for stopping by. Could John Harbaugh and Joe Schoen look to sign Christian Wilkins in free agency? I think it's an interesting name that was brought up by Art Stapleton. We'll dive into that. I think the Giants are going to be very aggressive at building up the trenches in free agency. We'll talk about Tyler Linderbaum, some new rumors coming out around him, some other defensive tackle free agency targets, and we'll look ahead to the NFL Combine as we are here in Indianapolis. We will be at the Combine all week long, and this is why you subscribe to the channel. No matter where we are, no matter what we're doing, this is going to be the best place on YouTube for Giants content 365 days a year. So subscribe and turn those notifications on. All right, let's start with Christian Wilkins, the free agent that signed a mega deal to go from the Miami Dolphins to the Las Vegas Raiders in the free agency cycle of 2024. Played in just 5 games in 2024, had some injury things pop up, and then he was released prior to the 2025 season by the Raiders. It was reported that there was a surgery that the Raiders thought that Wilkins needed to have. He disagreed. They cut him. There was also some talk about some things that went on in the locker room between his teammates that were not great either. But could he be a free agent target for the Giants? Art Stapleton mentioned him as a name to watch, adding that it would be a very Baltimore Ravens-y signing for John Harbaugh. Wilkins was an absolute beast in his first 5 years in the National Football League with the Miami Dolphins, was a first-round pick out of Clemson. He's really good friends with Dexter Lawrence, 30 years old. I still think there should be some quality football left in front of him, with the New York Giants being razor thin at that defensive tackle spot. Outside of Dexter Lawrence, you got Roy Robertson-Harris, Darius Alexander, Marlon Tupuotu, I don't even remember him on the Giants, and Elijah Chapman. You would think that they are going to beef up that side of the ball and that position group specifically, as the Ravens in the past have had a really good run defense. Wilkins was one of the better defensive tackles in 2023 with the Miami Dolphins. That is what got him that major deal with the Las Vegas Raiders. In that season, he was one of the best defensive tackles in the National Football League. 65 total tackles, gave you 10 tackles for loss, 23 QB hits, and he gave you 9 sacks. If you could get similar to that type of production next to Dexter Lawrence, the New York Giants would no longer be one of the worst defensive tackle groups in free agency. Played in 5 games for the Raiders in 2024, had 17 tackles to go with 2 tackles for loss and 6 quarterback hits. Something that is worrisome for me is the injuries as well as the things that went on in the locker room. I'd want to talk to Dexter Lawrence about those things and see what his relationship with him is like at this point. But I think it's worth a player being interested in and looking at. And I like the idea that there's a belief that the Giants are going to be interested in the defensive tackle position. Some other names to monitor: DJ Reader, PFF ranks him as the 20th best free agent heading into the 2026 cycle. They are projecting just a 1-year, $4.5 million deal. They say Reader is now 31 years old and has not quite matched his peak form from his time in Cincinnati since arriving and joining the Lions, but he remains an above-average starter at the NFL level. His 68.4 PFF grade ranked 36th among interior defensive linemen. He is someone at 31 years old that I think would be able to boost the Giants' run defense. I think a name to monitor as well is Calais Campbell. Played a couple of years with the Baltimore Ravens, has that relationship with John Harbaugh. I know he's 39 years old, and maybe the production has slowed down, but he was still a very impactful player last year. Logged 30-plus quarterback pressures in all but 2 of his NFL careers, and his 72.2 PFF overall grade last year made it 15 straight years of topping 70 overall. I think a player to keep an eye on as well, and we've talked about it, is David Onyemata, the interior defensive lineman for the Atlanta Falcons. 33 years old. His play remains firmly in the upper tier at his position after finishing 8th among 144 interior defenders, according to PFF, with a grade of 78.2. Another name to monitor could be Daquan Jones. One that seems to be getting a lot of buzz is John Franklin Myers, the defensive tackle who played last year for the Denver Broncos, was with the New York Jets from 2020 to 2023. He was a really good pass rusher and has been a really good pass rusher throughout his NFL career. Hasn't had less than 43 pressures since the 2018 season. If the Giants are looking to add another interior defensive lineman that can get after the quarterback, cause havoc, and make plays on obvious passing downs, Franklin Myers is that guy. One thing that I would be a little bit worried about with him is that he is a pass rusher from that interior spot. Not saying he can't play the run. He absolutely can, and it would be a major boost there, but he specializes as a pass rusher. 288 pounds, so a little bit light. If you're looking for a real big guy to be a running lane clogger and someone to get off and shed blocks and make a lot of plays at the line of scrimmage. But if you're talking about one of the best pass rushing defensive tackles in free agency, Franklin Myers is that guy, and he's going to be compensated as such. People think that he could sign a 3-year deal worth $45 million total, $15 million annually. If the Giants are looking to make a splash on the defensive line, keep your eyes on Franklin Myers. A lot of people have been drawing connections from him to the Giants as Giants have money to spend. They're going to create some more money, and he is the player at the position of need that is garnering the most interest across the National Football League. Got a couple more things that we're going to talk about on today's show. First, though, I got to give a huge shout out to our sponsor, that is Prize Picks, the best daily fantasy sports app out there. Get hooked up with them, shoot your shot, and get $50 instantly in lineups when you play your first $5 lineup. That's right. Prize Picks is now giving you $50 in lineups when you sign up and play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks makes every dunk, every dime, and every board that much more exciting. So don't miss this chance to get started on America's #1 app for sports picks. Football season may be over, but it is now time for hoops. Hoop season is here, and get playing with Prize Picks. It's easy. All you do is create a lineup of 2 to 6 players. You simply pick more or pick less on the stat projection that Prize Picks has for that player. If you get all of your picks right in your lineup, you can win big. Download the Prize Picks app today and use code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, it's good to be right. Let's go back to some other defensive tackle targets, and then we'll talk NFL draft as well. I think some other names to keep in mind when you're talking about defensive tackles. Sebastian Joseph Day is a name that I have brought up a couple of times. Spent the last 2 years with the Tennessee Titans. Has that connection to Dennard Wilson, who is now the defensive coordinator for the Giants. At 31 years old, I still think that he has some prime years coming up in his career. 6'4", 310 pounds. I think he is more so the type of defensive tackle the Giants are going to be looking for, and maybe even in their shopping budget, as I don't think he's going to command nearly the contract that some of the top defensive tackles will. He's been one of the better run defensive tackles in the National Football League over the last 2 years. I think sliding him next to Dexter Lawrence on the defensive line makes a lot of sense. PFF projects a 1-year, $6.5 million deal for him. Sheldon Rankins could be a player the Giants are interested in. He's also someone that can help you beef up that defensive line. 305 pounds at 6'2", 31 years old. Player like him could make some sense. Christian Wilkins, though, he remains a wild card. He could be the steal of the offseason. He's graded out multiple times as a top 10 defensive tackle. And if he can return to form, the guy that made his money, the one that played in the 305 for the Miami Dolphins, if you can get that level of player to join the New York Giants, that defensive line is going to be one of the best in the National Football League. All right, NFL Combine Week is here. I think some players to keep an eye on Combine Week for the Giants. Let's start with the receivers. Carnell Tate is obviously one, as well as Jordan Tyson. Jordan Tyson? Why do I want to say Jordan Tyson? I think it's Jordan Tyson, the wide receiver from Arizona State. Yeah, Jordan Tyson. I'm thinking of Jalen Tyson. I'm pretty sure that's his brother for the Cleveland Cavaliers. But Jordan Tyson, the injury issues really do scare me with him. He's had a lot of success and a lot of production. I'm going to be interested to talk to both of those guys. Wondering if they are going to compete in some drills. Excited to see always wide receivers go compete on air more so than every other position. Get to see those body movements and how they track the ball in air. Look, if either of those guys are truly all-pro wide receivers, it's going to be hard for the Giants to turn either of them down. They have a major need there, and potentially with Wan'Dale Robinson leaving, they're going to continue to need to beef up that room. Then you go to the defensive side of the ball, and you're looking at guys like Sonny Styles of Ohio State, Caleb Downs of Ohio State. Is there a world where Arvell Reese falls to 5? I think that is a possibility. What about either tackle, Spencer Fano, the right tackle, or CeCe Maui Noah out of Miami? Like, there are a lot of guys the New York Giants are going to be targeting at number 5. I'm interested to see what the official visits look like at the Combine this week. Each team can get 30 official visits where they get to spend exclusive time with draft targets. And that can always kind of put some color to the picture of who they're targeting in the NFL draft. Again, I don't hate a trade down from number 5. You only have 2 picks in the top 100. Is there a way where you trade down and you add 2 more of those selections? A lot of holes to fill on this football team. The Ravens have always followed the model of building through the NFL draft. I don't expect that to change now that John Harbaugh is joining the New York Giants. I think that they will continue to do that, and it starts this week in Indy. Excited. I'm pumped up. John Harbaugh talks tomorrow. Joe Schoen talks tomorrow, and we will be there. So subscribe, turn those notifications on, and let's go Giants.